Some towers have placement limits, and with a reason. To prevent them from being too OP or just straight up breaking the game. But what would happen if that limit would be removed? Which towers would benefit the most and how broken would they become? Thanks to the power of sandbox mode, I tested 9 different towers to see their new limitless power, starting with a cheap and effective early game crowd controller with 3 variations of traps to choose from, being spikes, mines and bad traps. Spikes can deal with dense swarms of enemies, and are his most popular use case. Mines on the other hand are one-time exploding bombs, which set anyone on fire who gets too close during detonation. And the bear traps deal high single target DPS, stunning units as they get trapped in it. As I expected, the trapper didn't have any trouble dealing with swarms of enemies, but it did really struggle against the fallen giant, where I had to switch everyone to mines and barely killed them. But later on, when the fallen jester came out, buffing 3 different fallen giants, I knew I had lost, and there was no chance for me. Marking the trapper's last wave as wave 26. So is it OP? No. It wasn't as spammable as I thought it would be, and the later levels to deal more damage at were too expensive to get. But I am testing these towers in solo Fallen, and I'm only using the towers themselves, with exceptions of support towers. Technically, Trapper doesn't have flying detection, and I tried giving him flying detection, but he still didn't target them, so I just dealt with them with some consumables. I think that's fair enough. If you think otherwise, go do it yourself, I don't care. A fan favorite early game to mid game tower. By being cheap and the units having decent health and cheap hidden detection, it is capable of getting you through every early game and still deal modest damage in the late game. And with its airstrike ability, it is surely enough to deal with flying and swarms of enemies. But apparently my expectations were too high. I would have thought that with how cheap it is and dealing good damage, it would have no struggle against the last wave. But when the Fallen Shield came out on wave 30, it was way too tanky and we barely dealt any damage and he killed us. Marking the military base's last wave as wave 30. The strongest spawning tower and the favorite amongst high level players. It can deal with any type of enemy, it has high damage output, and it can even be used as a good support tower, giving towers nearby a 20% damage boost. The Mercenary base has 4 units to choose from, being the Rifleman, a walking soldier with hidden and flying detection on later levels, capable of high damage, especially when clumped up with other riflemen. Grenadier, with its big AoE and high damage when clumped up, being able to shred through crowds of tanky enemies. Riot Guard, high health and defense units running along the track to slam and stun enemies in front of it. A great combo with the ability to drop a high health wall to stop enemies on their path. Field Medic, slow walking supports for the other units, protecting them from stuns and projectiles with a shield, and healing them along the way. And knowing how much damage this tower can deal, I thought it would be no struggle until the Fallen King. But something I was worried about was the price of it. It is a very expensive tower, and at the end, that was the reason why it failed. When the first Fallen Giant came, it was no struggle for my Rifleman to just take it down. On wave 25, when the Fallen Jester buffed those 3 Fallen Giants, I sent out some Riot Guards and that dealt with it. But on wave 30 it was just too much and we got overrun. Marking the Mercenary base's last wave as wave 30.
I got the ray gun! Oh.
Slow fire rate, high damage cliff tower with flying and lead detection. A popular choice in hardcore against the lead balloons, with the ability to boost other towers' range and unlocking an explosive shot on level 4. On towers like this I will use the cowboy, because especially with the ranger he is a single target damage dealer. So I would say it's fair enough to deal with smaller enemies with the cowboy. Yeah, as expected. I mean, the cowboys did the most of the work. The rangers did deal with some higher health enemies, but it's just too expensive. It's a late game tower, single target, it's not gonna do well. It did get to wave 30 though, but without the cowboy it would be really bad, yeah. Now this one is interesting. Gatling gun. The most late game tower unlocking at level 175. It's the most expensive and most damage dealing tower in the game with a placement limit of 1. So how broken can it really get when you have enough money for more? I would have guessed it to be too expensive and maybe lacks splash damage too, but the pure DPS came in clutch and it actually performed really good, but with the short wave times of Fallen mode, it got overrun on wave 38. But I would consider this more or less OP. My personal favorite tower in the game. A late game beast.
Oh, baby, a triple!
Collecting souls from enemies and summoning gravestones for its skeletons to rise from. When buffed by other towers, he and his high health units can't be beaten. So I have very high hopes for him. And to my surprise, he actually did it. I would have thought the lack of AoE or his dependence on the units would kill him, but after I got 5 of them down, it was just too good. This tower has a placement limit of 3 for a reason. So does it pass the OP test? Definitely. A cheap early game defense. Not strong, but it gets through the early game, and it can help in the mid game. With it being cheap and now spammable too, I would assume it getting through some of the harder waves, but it's definitely dying as soon as the tanky enemies come out. Okay, very surprising. I spammed so many elf camps, they managed to get to wave 28. Eventually they couldn't hold up anymore. But because this is so funny and satisfying, let's fill out the map and max out everything. And this is how it looks. Over 200 maxed out elf camps. I definitely broke some things.
You fool! You absolute buffoon! You think you can challenge me in my own realm? You think you can rebel against my authority? You dare come into my house and upturn my dining chairs and spill coffee grounds in my Keurig? You thought you were safe in your chain mail armor behind that screen of yours? I will take these laminate wood floorboards and destroy you. I didn't want war, but I didn't start it.
A mid to late game damage dealer. Other than the ability to see hidden and flying enemies, it can summon various different units also with hidden and flying detection to assist him in taking down those zombies. I have high hopes for this tower, but we'll see how far it gets. I'm starting to think that they should give you more time between the waves in Fallen mode. Still, no real weakness, it was just too many enemies. Wave 38 finish. And that was the last of our towers. Share your thoughts on the challenge and maybe how I could optimize it in the comment section. And thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.